if one partner has grown up with very little money and the other partner perhaps with more money, the partner that has that sense of money is easy come, easy go may not understand the other partner who's cautious and anxious about money. So I think you need to look at your own emotions around money. Are you anxious, and is money something that you fear, or is it something that you use and enjoy? These are the things that you want to be deciding and discussing. And then going forward, how are you going to view this shared investment that you have? Is it going to be an exciting endeavor, or is it going to be a source of conflict, or is it going to be something frightening? You know, that what happens if we don't have money? These are all the discussions you need to have.
Welcome back to another episode of Frankly Speaking, where we tackle topics around investing and managing your money with a no-jargon approach. My name is Cassidy and Brett, and I'm Head of Growth at Franc, an app that's making investing simple and for everyone. If you want to learn more about what we do, check out the description box below. If you like what you see or hear, then give us a like, leave us a comment, or tap on subscribe for future episodes. Today we're going to be talking about saving and investing with your partner. With me today I have Brett Nudal, who has over 18 years experience as a counseling psychologist and who, yes, happens to also be my mom. Having vast experience in couples counseling, she was a no-brainer to invite into our studio today to help us unpack this topic. Thanks so much for joining me today, Brett.
Hi, Cassidy. Thanks for having me.
It feels very strange calling you Brett and not Mom, but we'll try it out for today. Awesome. So should we start first by asking the question, is it even a good idea to save and invest with your partner?
I think in certain circumstances it's a great idea, because if you have shared goals, for example, buying a property together, perhaps going on honeymoon, paying for a wedding, kids' education, it's something that you both want, and to save together makes it a team effort, and I think it's a bonding situation, and I think it brings security and closeness if you can get it right.
Yeah, totally. You answered my next question, which was really around the benefits of saving and investing together. I guess financially, there's probably benefits as well, right? You're pooling your money together.
Absolutely.
Potentially putting an investment where it can grow together, having more advantage because you have more to play with. But really good to hear that there are some relationship benefits.
Yes, I think so. Yes. Can also be relationship drawbacks. I think if you...
My next question.
Yes. Have problems in a relationship, sometimes money is going to make those problems more problematic.
Yes. So what might those, I guess, red flags be that could potentially flare up into relationship issues with finances?
Often different partners in the relationship have different saving styles. So you may have the big spender and the frugal person. And if you have those two that come together, it's problematic if you are arguing continually about how to invest and where to invest. I think also having different risk profiles. So somebody who is happy with taking high risk, and then the partner is very cautious, that may exacerbate the differences between you and cause problems there.
And what happens if one of you earns more than the other? Or, for example, if one of you is a stay-at-home parent and the other one earns, where there's obviously a difference in the money that you have to save and invest?
I think this is where conversation around how you're going to do this is important. If you have different earning amounts, then you're going to need to decide whether the person that earns more is able to or willing to put more money towards the investment, and whether that becomes a power differential, whether that's problematic. Again, that's something that you'll have to discuss between the two of you and see what you feel is fair. I always recommend that you contribute according to the amount that you earn, and that each partner also has the opportunity to have some money aside where they are able to spend without having to explain where they're spending. So, you know, if you're going to set up a budget, to be able to say a certain amount goes towards our joint savings or our joint expenditure, and then a certain amount you also have freedom to spend that without having to explain, or you've got that freedom, or to buy perhaps a gift for your partner without that partner then knowing or controlling any of that.
Okay, so that probably means that you have to have quite a few conversations around money and around your thoughts and ideas around money before you go into a savings or a joint investment, right?
Definitely.
So what are the kind of questions that you should probably ask each other, or the topics that you should cover as a couple in that conversation?
Even before you have a conversation with your partner, it's to also have an understanding of your own understanding of money and finances, and your own beliefs around money and what money represents for you. So we all grow up in a family, or however we grow up with money being part of that equation in whatever level. And it's to understand whether you saw your parents or your significant others arguing over money, or whether there was a power differential in terms of who held the money, who was the breadwinner. Those are the things that you need to consider going forward. And that's what you often bring to the table when you are investing and embarking on your own financial future, is the way that you think about money.
And is it a good idea then also to have that conversation with your partner about what your parents maybe did with money, or, other relationships that you witnessed when it came to money as well, to kind of give them that background, I guess, to what your feelings and thoughts are around money? I
think so. Also, if one partner has grown up with very little money and the other partner perhaps with more money, the partner that has that sense of money is easy come, easy go may not understand the other partner who's cautious and anxious about money. So I think you need to look at your own emotions around money. Are you anxious, and is money something that you fear, or is it something that you use and enjoy? These are the things that you want to be deciding and discussing. And then going forward, how are you going to view this shared investment that you have? Is it going to be an exciting endeavor, or is it going to be a source of conflict, or is it going to be something frightening? That what happens if we don't have money? These are all the discussions you need to have. If one of us loses our job, or what are we going to do? So I think looking at finances as a joint endeavor, you want to be talking about all the different ramifications of what might happen and what you would be happy doing if those situations were to occur.
In that case, would it be different if you were married versus not married?
If you're going to have a prenuptial agreement, you're already talking about money before you get married. And I think that's a good thing, in that it starts that financial conversation. And I think having a contract in many cases protects both parties. When you're not married, I would very much not recommend going into any kind of financial agreement when you're still in the stage of infatuation, because you're not thinking straight.
Good advice.
And rose-colored spectacles, and you imagine that you will always be together forever, and you may make very risky situations for yourself if you're not thinking straight. So I think marriage definitely means you're already talking about the contracts. And certain contracts, I think, protect you more than others. Everybody has a different idea about what contract they use. But if you're not married, I still would recommend drawing up a contract if you are going to have a shared investment, or at least having some set fast rules that you discuss and agree on. Because particularly if the investment is going to be in one person's name, that person then has the freedom and the control. And if things go bad, what will happen then in that case with the money that the other person has contributed towards that joint investment? Those things need to be discussed. And if there's any concern that it won't be protected, then put a contract in place.
It sounds like it could actually be, for argument's sake, a good test before you get married is to kind of have a small saving together and see how that goes, right?
Perhaps.
Maybe this is the secret to a happy marriage that we've just cracked in a Frankly Speaking episode.
It could be, because I think money and money difficulties are one of the biggest causes of divorce.
On that note, what would you say some of the red flags are in a relationship or from your partner that you should, identify and kind of stop you from going into a joint savings or investment? If
you see that your partner is a big spender and an impulsive spender, so impulsivity, I think, is problematic, because then it's unlikely that person is going to kind of do the distance in terms of actually working towards an actual saving and an actual goal. I think that's one of the things. Also, what I see in practice, which is quite interesting, is often when partners do get divorced or married couples do get divorced, sometimes someone is actually hiding funds, putting funds away, and hiding their assets. So if you see that beforehand, for me that would be a red flag. If before you actually do a joint investment, if you see your partner doing some kind of shady thing, that would be a red flag for me. And also a concern if there is any perhaps mental instability. Certain mental conditions also come with a lot of impulsivity and spending and unpredictable spending. And also the fact that something can happen to any one of us and we can become incapacitated. And in that case, what would happen if that investment were in that person's name?
Yeah.
That's something that also needs to be discussed and decided on to protect the person who's not the owner of that policy or that investment.
Other than all those things, I mean, even if you have a different view on money, which is very common in a relationship, does that always mean that you're incompatible with having a joint savings or investment? Do you think it's something you can overcome?
Absolutely. I think if you have clear and honest conversation around your financial beliefs, and if you have shared goals that you really want to work towards, and if you see your differing ways as being complementary as opposed to a conflict, I think then it doesn't matter that you're different, because it can be complementary. The person that's very frugal perhaps needs that more impulsive person to loosen up and enjoy their money, and the person that's perhaps too impulsive might need the more cautious investor to say, hang on, let's slow down and let's do this a little bit more carefully. So, but it all comes down to communication. If you're able to sit down, do a budget, and talk about these things openly, honestly, and comfortably, then I think it doesn't matter if you're different. You can make that a complementary situation.
So these conversations are never easy.
No.
I've tried to have them a few times myself, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. Any tips for going into that conversation with your partner? The atmosphere that you set, or how you maybe even broach the conversation, because I think that sometimes also in itself can be really difficult. Because it sometimes sounds accusatory, like, I want to have the money talk with you.
Yes.
Anything from your experience with your clients that you've seen people that have done it really well and people that haven't done it so well?
I think timing is everything. You want to be having this conversation when everyone's relaxed, when you haven't been drinking, when you're not tired. I think those are the times to sit down and talk about money, and also around the goals as opposed to money talk. This is what we're looking forward to. This is what we're hoping for, and how are we going to get there, and to make it a happy conversation as opposed to a fraught with conflict conversation. I think that's an important part.
I really like that, because it's more aspirational than it is serious, I guess. I mean, it should be serious, but having that overarching aspiration is also really important.
I think in every relationship, it's very much how you speak to each other and how respectfully you speak to each other about whatever conflict you may be having and whatever discussion you may be having.
Okay, so hypothetically, you've now had this conversation. You've covered all the topics that we've spoken about, things like your background, how your parents dealt with money together, how you see money, probably your debts, your assets, being very open about that. Once you've had this conversation, what is kind of the indication that you've got the green light? It's a good idea for you to go into a savings or an investment together.
You actually brought up something that I think needs attention as well, that thing of debt, because if you come into a relationship with debt, then it's the discussion about, how do we deal with this debt? Do we deal with this debt as a unit, or do you pay that debt off before we start to do joint saving? Because it doesn't really make sense to save when there's high interest on debt that may be owed, and that's a difficult one that needs to be discussed. And I think if you can discuss that comfortably, negotiate it, come to an agreement that both parties are happy with, that for me is already a green light, because there you are tackling something that's a difficult start, but you're already tackling it as a team. And I think if you have good communication in your relationship and money is not a source of conflict, that you are comfortable talking about the money, that also for me is a green light.
Okay. So now you've gone into this investment or savings together, right? Arguably started a shared goal on the Franc app. How would you recommend a couple keeps each other accountable and on track? Are there any, habits or things that they can put in place to help each other out and stay motivated towards their goals?
I think once you've decided on how much each person is going to contribute towards that investment, I think it's a good idea then to set up a debit order so that money just comes off automatically off the account, so that you don't have a situation where every month you have to now consider, can I afford this, can't I afford this, should I be paying this, am I fighting with my partner, am I happy about this whole thing? If you've agreed and you've negotiated and it's the debit order, you can forget about it. But I think also you need to be flexible. So I think a check-in, a regular check-in, perhaps monthly or every couple of months, to again look at the goal, look at your situation, look at the budget and say, okay, is this working for us? Have we put too much towards it? Are we putting too little? Could we put more? So I think flexibility, a regular, consistent check-in, and a debit order. I also would recommend that both are able to sign on that account before you are able to withdraw funds. I think that's an important aspect, because that does then make you both accountable for what happens to those funds.
Or at least, to your original point, have a contract in place that covers things like, what happens when one of us wants to withdraw or needs that money, or when we've reached our goal and our goal amount and we want to take that money out. How is that distributed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. To your point about the debit order, I think it also helps to avoid that awkward, did you put your money into the savings account conversation, which is never a fun one to have.
Absolutely.
Or, did you buy electricity this month? Or was it my turn?
Yes.
Yeah, it helps to avoid those kind of awkward conversations. And I like the fact that you check in as well.
Yes.
Because I can imagine also sometimes your goals might change together or individually, right? So, which brings me to my next question. Say that one of you has a personal goal that maybe needs to be prioritized. Maybe you need to upskill yourself and invest in your education rather than whatever you're investing in with your partner.
Yes.
Any suggestions for how you bring that up, I guess, again, in a conversation?
It will have to be a conversation. And along with that, too, is if a family member or a friend is in trouble, financial trouble, it's to be able to have that conversation about, would we stop our own goals and help somebody else, and to what extent? Because that can happen in many families as well.
Yeah, of course.
And that's often there's a differing opinion on how much we should contribute and whether it's fair to contribute.
Yeah.
So that it again comes down to communication. Sometimes you may have to stop that particular goal and leave that investment in place, or use it for something else because a crisis situation comes up. And then again, communication will get you through that, and you'll be able to decide how to use those funds. Something that you spoke about a little earlier, which also made me think about not just about an investment and a savings account, but sometimes to have a joint account for household expenses. To work out what your household expenses are per month, and then to decide on who contributes how much amount, and then to put that into an account, a separate account, and then all the debit orders come off there. Because that again stops that, have you paid the electricity this month? Or is it my turn, or is it your turn?
Yeah.
This is what it costs for us to live together, and let's have a fund which pays for that on a regular basis.
It's a good idea.
It does help also to stop the arguments.
Yeah. And then you also have more visibility, I guess, as to what you collectively can save.
Absolutely.
Because you know what you're spending.
Yes. And then also both partners can see what it costs to live, because in some situations you find one person will be the breadwinner, or one person will deal with the bills because they're better at it, in inverted commas, and the other person will just sit back and be the passenger and say, great, you just take care of everything. And that's not fair either. You want to empower both parties to know what's going on and to be aware of what it costs to live, and to be responsible for that too.
I feel like we're adding more and more to this list of conversation points that you need to have with your partner. And I thought it'd be worth maybe just recapping quickly, because I think this is really important. So, that background of finances and kind of where you come from, your parents or your family, and how they used to view money, and what your approaches to money as well.
Yes.
Assets and debt, and being very transparent about what your assets are, what your debts are, and then collectively or jointly deciding how you're going to approach the debts, for example. Yes. Are you going to pay it back together, or is the one person responsible for it and the other waits until they've kind of covered their debts, right? And then how are you going to approach emergency situations, whether that's family oriented, which is obviously very fraught with emotion and different opinions, or even just, if say, for example, you don't live together and one person's geyser bursts, obviously they need to address that, for example. So it's like, how do you approach emergency situations. Anything else that I've missed on our list?
No, I think again comes down to flexibility. It has to be flexible. You can't it can't be cast in stone.
I'm seeing more and more why this check-in is a very good idea.
Very important, yes. And it will also highlight issues of control. If you find within the relationship and you discuss all of these things, communicate these things. If one person is excessively controlling, that for me is a red flag for this is going to be problematic. It needs to be it needs to be a team effort.
Totally. Anything else to add to this conversation?
No, I think we could go on for hours and hours.
I think so too. It feels very much like the conversations that we used to have at the kitchen table when I was a teenager and my mum was finishing off her master's in psychology. Always interesting. But thank you so much for joining us, Brett.
It's a pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
It was great fun.
It was very fun to have you on, and some really interesting insights that I think all of our listeners can benefit a lot from. Thank you to our audience for listening or watching. Again, if you liked this episode, please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe for future episodes. They come out regularly. And comment and tell us, do you have any questions around saving and investing with your partner or anything else around investing and managing your money? Cheers for now.